welcome everybody. This is my first video chat. As all of you that know me know, I'm really passionate about creating great places to work, and I've created the Workplace Wellness Club, and that's a place where people can join together to just talk about all things related to creating great places to work. That will cover employee engagement, workplace culture, employee well-being, conflict management, having those difficult conversations, and just making sure that, you know, life at work is not always easy, but there are ways in which we can do things that make it much more a much happier place to be, and make sure that you get efficient, engaged employees, and just makes it overall a great place to work. So one of the things that I thought would be useful is to just meet with various people and ask them their view on what they think creates a great place to work, and we can all share these business learnings and have conversations about it, and hopefully with sharing this knowledge we can achieve the goal of creating great places to work. So my very first guest is Caroline Green. She is the founder of the Talent Cycle, but she's also got a background in HR and L&D as well. But Caroline will be able to explain that much better than I can. So welcome, Caroline. Could you tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be your first guest. So my name's Caroline Green, and I run a company called the Talent Cycle. And what I do with that is, as you say, my background, my career history has been a kind of mixture of both career coaching and career guidance, both for young people and professionals, and working for a number of years in learning and specifically in a learning and development role, but kind of often being based within the HR function. And part of the reason that I set the business up actually was a combination, because I wanted to do both those things. So my company, I support, I do a lot of work supporting people who are looking to change career and are perhaps feeling a bit stuck, not quite sure, kind of, they know that their current role isn't quite working for them anymore, or perhaps never has, but they're not quite sure how to move on, how to either figure out what they want to do, or even if they know how to do it, how to go about that. So I work with a lot of people like that. I'm particularly at the moment working with a lot of people who have, unfortunately, their roles have been made redundant, so helping them again sort of work out some of that, kind of what the next steps are, how to upskill themselves, how to sort of transfer, show their transferable skills, how to job hunt, even for some of these people that they haven't job hunted for a while. They don't know the sort of websites, they don't know how to make use of LinkedIn or how to write a good CV and things like that, so I support them as well. But I also do a lot of work with employers as well, so as I say, with that learning and development background, so supporting them, and I think we are kindred spirits when it comes to that. Employee engagement, work is difficult, it's long, you spend a lot of your life, I can't remember, I think there is some statistic, isn't there, about how many years and how much time of your life you spend at work, but it's a lot, and so actually trying to make it a nicer place for everybody is a good thing, both just from a morale point of view, from a culture point of view, but also because actually you get the best possible performance from your staff when they are engaged and happy. And again, that's something I do a lot of, working with line managers particularly, who are kind of linchpins of any organisation and who are right at the forefront of helping move forward some of those ideas, some of that culture, some of that, I once worked with a chief exec who sort of talked about, as a line manager, you can cast a very long shadow. So I spend a lot of my time working with managers to make sure that they're not casting a bad shadow, that they are supporting their employees as well. So that's kind of a mixture of what I do, so lots of different things.
So what do you think makes a great place to work?
So, well, interestingly, I was running a session recently actually with a group and called To Get Employers Chasing You. So they were sort of looking for roles, and I was talking to them about, actually, when I work with clients, quite often they sort of jump straight in and they want to sort of start, right, okay, what's a job title? I need to start searching for this. What's that? But actually, I sort of say, before you do that, what's really important is to think about actually the kind of place that you want to work and what your values are, what matters to you. And part of that was doing a career timeline activity. So we did, if you imagine, sort of a horizontal line, and I asked people to map out, literally like the highs and lows of their career to date. And then think about why actually, why have they put that thing as quite, a high point in their career and low and so on. And it's an activity that I've done myself actually in the past. And what I really discovered from that was, for me, what makes a great place to work is somewhere where I feel valued and supported, that I've got the right amount. It's again, and I work with managers a lot on this as well, it's that getting that balance right between the right level of challenge so people aren't bored, but that they are supported as well, so they don't feel like they're kind of sort of drowning in this challenge that's too big for them. And I found that that's for me a really important part of making a great place to work. And kind of linked to that, it's definitely about not liking being micromanaged. I don't think I've met anyone in my whole life who likes that, and actually if they do, it's often a sign that they are being challenged too much, and they're scared and they don't know what to do. But generally, yes, being micromanaged I'm not a fan of, and part of that I think is because actually if someone's micromanaging me, what that says to me is you don't trust me. You don't think that I can do this job myself. You don't think, and it may not be actually the case for them, but that's what it's saying to me. So I think an organisation where you listen to your employees and you trust them and support them to get on with the role that they've been hired to do, to me that's one of the kind of key things of what makes a place a great place to work.
Yeah, I think that's right, actually, and I think there is some business quote or some business learning about that, and it's, why would you hire somebody to do a job and then tell them how to do it when actually you've hired them for the very skills that perhaps you don't yourself have?
Yeah.
But often we see that in this kind of command and control type management process. And I agree, I don't think it works very well. In my experience, people that are micromanaged are very unhappy, and that can impact on their mental health, and it will also impact on their productivity, because they become very fearful of doing anything off their own back because they are worried of the consequences. So they'll need that constant hand holding, and it's just a really bad way to run a business and to manage people.
Absolutely.
You touched on there about line managers having to find that right balance between keeping employees challenged and engaged, and obviously being overwhelmed or stressed. So what do you think businesses can do to improve employee well-being and sort of like reduce stress? I mean, a certain amount of stress is obviously very useful. It can be helpful, but you don't want it to go too far.
Yeah, I think there's that difference, isn't it, between there's pressure and there's stress. Pressure can be good and can help. I'm a Myers-Briggs practitioner, and I work a lot with people about how people work. So for some people, they like that kind of lastminute.com kind of pressure environment. Others don't at all. So, and I think that's part of it is as well, is about that thinking about individuals and listening to individuals. So certainly when I do sort of with my L&D hat on, so previous roles I've worked out with clients, quite often I will work with them on things like employee engagement surveys, which are really important and they are really good to do. They get you, they give you a feel for how your organisation is feeling. However, a lot of employers don't do it quite right. If you start kind of using them almost as a performance measure, your team must have this score, then actually that you're not listening then to what your employees are telling you. Others will do them and then just sort of say, right, okay, that's that box ticked then, lovely. But actually, although they kind of give you a bit of a feel and a bit of a measure, to me that's only the first step. What's really important is then that you follow that through, because they don't. A lot of those sorts of questions you can interpret them in lots of different ways and things like that. So it's important that you follow it through and do things like I've run focus groups before and picked up some of the kind of key areas where there were obviously concerns, and then run focus groups to sort of listen, in a bit more detail about actually what is the problem here? Because you can only improve employee engagement and well-being if you know what the issue is. You can make assumptions, but often it's not actually what's really going on underneath it. So I would say that's a really good place to start, but there's lots of other things organisations can do to support the employee wellbeing. There are things like having employee assistance programs, so EAPs as they're often known, which tend to be the thing that HR know about, and most organisations have, but no one outside of HR even realises that they exist. And what they are sort of external organisations that provide support for employees where there's no charge to the employee. So it can, and there's a range of things that they offer. It depends on the actual provider, but it will be things like perhaps counselling services, different therapy type services. Often there's just sort of things about sort of fact sheets about various different things, and it can be anything from will writing to dealing with depression or other sort of well-being kind of issues and mental health challenges that people might have. So it's really worth investigating, whether your organisation has that. I think that's definitely something. And also, working with employees to support them in their well-being in these difficult times as well. So I've done a lot of work with organisations who are looking at even things like team building. Actually, people are feeling really disengaged and really separated because of the physical separation from their teams. You can't just sort of lean over your desk and talk to the person next to you. So it's about, again, sort of a lot of the work that I do is about actually how can we still stay connected. How can you improve people's well-being? How can you support them? At the moment, it's very tempting to walk, 5 minutes, probably for most people, 5 minutes from your bedroom to your spare bedroom to sit at your desk. To sit there all day. You haven't got that kind of natural water cooler moments, as they say. And I know a lot of people who are sitting there and doing crazy hours and not ever getting up and having a break and things like that. So again, employers at the moment encouraging employees to do that, and even things, I know organisations that I've worked with are doing things like virtual challenges, so everyone's sort of walking 5 miles a day and they're trying to kind of walk across the world doing that, or whatever it may be. Things like that at the moment, I think, make a real difference to well-being.
I was speaking to a client the other day actually, and they've put in place some kind of virtual step challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their employees, prior to the step challenge starting, only logged 300 steps for a whole day. It's because we're not leaving our houses. Like you say, we're going from our bedrooms to our spare rooms, maybe to the kitchen to get a drink, or working. So we're not as fit and active as we once were. It's a real problem. And also, as you mentioned, the hours. The boundary becomes very blurred between home and work when you're at home all the time. And I'm guilty of it myself. Sometimes I'm working out of a spare bedroom, and I'll check my laptop before I go to bed. It's like, this is crazy. If I had been at work all day in the office, I perhaps wouldn't be doing that. But because it's here and it's all set up, it's very easy to blur those boundaries. So that's something that all employers need to be really aware of at the moment, especially as there are health and safety obligations on employers as well, to make sure that they're looking after the physical and mental health of their employees. And also there's working time regulation issues as well. There's all sorts of things that I think employers perhaps may have overlooked, and we might be storing up problems for the future.
I guess for a lot of employers as well, when we started this, we weren't planning to be doing this for a year. We all thought, it'll be a few weeks perhaps, and there's a big difference, isn't there, between yes, I'll just sort of perch here at my desk for a week or two, versus actually yes, after a year, like you say, and those kind of obligations for employers and the line managers to be looking after their staff as well. Because actually, if you're feeling, it's not just that. Actually, if you're feeling physically unwell or physically unfit, whether that's just because you're sitting at a desk that isn't the right height for you and that's hurt your shoulders, and then you're not going to perform as well as you could if you were kind of comfortable and ready to work.
So you mentioned about keeping in touch with your team, and especially now we've got this physical distance between us. How do you think businesses can keep their employees keen and motivated at this difficult time, or actually in any time, but especially at the moment?
I mean, I think it is, that is a big part of it, is that human connection thing, but also I guess for me it comes back to that thing again of listening to your employees, and this is where we get to the detail of listening to individuals, because everybody is different. We've heard a lot about the challenges, and absolutely there have been huge amounts of challenges for people during this time, but some people actually really enjoy working from home. For them it's actually been really good. To put my Myers-Briggs hat on again, it's about that sort of different preferences, and I think sometimes it's about actually utilize that, learn from those people. What actually do they do or even, you know, forgetting about the preferences, just people who seem to be sort of surviving and thriving even in this environment, talking to them about, okay, what is it you're doing? You know, is it because you've got a routine that you know, is that something that we can all follow, or, you know, whatever it may be, is definitely something that you can do to sort of help that engagement and motivation. It's also about kind of being understanding, particularly at the moment, that you know, for some people this is the particularly challenging time. You know, I it blows my mind, all of the parents out there. I absolutely take my hat off to you all who are trying to homeschool and work at the same time. And the clients that I work with, the really successful ones, are the employers who are saying, okay, we understand that, we acknowledge that, let's figure out a way that we can make this work for you. So for some employers, it's, you know, extending that day, so parents perhaps are not working in the middle of the day where they're sort of supporting their children, and then they're kind of working earlier and later, or, you know, or whatever it may be. It's just figuring out a way to support them. So I'd say that's sort of definitely something that's really important at the moment. But also it's, again, and I guess this goes back to that thing of, you know, this isn't just we're not just doing this for a few weeks, we've been doing this for a year now nearly. It's, you know, nearly an anniversary, isn't it? And probably potentially might be doing it for a bit longer yet. And it's thinking about, actually, how can you keep supporting employees during that time? So things that maybe might not have seemed so important when, you know, in the early days when it was just firefighting mode, actually now this is it, this is where we are. So thinking about things like reward and recognition is really important for employees in terms of their engagement and their motivation. But, and again, this is something I train a lot of line managers on, again, it goes back to that thing of understand that individual employee. I've managed people in the past, and I often use the example when I was managing two women. One, it was almost like, it's not worth, the job is not worth doing unless I get lots of praise for it, and the more public the better. She, you know, she thrived on that. The other one, if I even tried to praise her in private, you know, it would be kind of almost the end of the world. And I never quite got to the bottom of why. I think because she felt, I don't know, she just wasn't comfortable with that. So actually the way that I rewarded her and recognised her was actually to give her kind of more challenging work. And it was like me saying, look, I trust you, you've done a really good job with this piece of work, so now I'm going to give you this piece of work. And that was the sort of the different way to reward her and motivate her. If I'd switched the two, it would have been carnage. So I think it's about, you know, knowing your employees is really important. And also at an organisational level, I think it's about communicating, and it's about trusting your employees, you know, trust them to do the job that you've hired them to do. I guess that's a micromanaging thing. But you know, across the organisation, and make everybody feel, we talk a lot about goals, and we talk about organisational goals, and we talk about individual goals, and where employers sometimes kind of miss a trick is that they don't do enough work in terms of linking those two. There very often is a link between those two, but making sure that employees understand that they are part of a bigger thing, and that really helps motivation and engagement for employees.
So when we was talking earlier, you mentioned about the values of an organisation and employees making sure they join the right place that fits with their own values. And obviously you just mentioned there as well about listening to your employees, and I think the company values are you know, really important in the way that how they will treat their employees. So how do you think you can help employees, especially new employees, actually understand the business values and what the organisation is all about?
I think what's really important when it comes to things like, you know, values, is that the company, it's not just, you know, written down on a document that, again, probably only HR kind of ever sees. It's, you know, as the organisations that I work with, where it's really, really effective, where they have a really strong culture, is because they have values and they talk about them all the time, and they bring them into everything that they do. So they bring them into, even, you know, even before, because we were talking about new employees, but even before that stage, actually, as part of that recruitment phase, as a interviewee, you should be really, really clear I mean, this is something that I would work with clients with about job searching. I would absolutely tell them to be looking at the company and looking at the values and things like that. But it should actually, that shouldn't be hard work for them. It should just be there right in their face, you know, when they're looking at a job advert. This is what this company is. This is what they do. This is what they stand for. This is the kind of people that they're looking for. Because that's really good then, because then you attract the right candidates to start with. And you can have a two-way conversation in that recruitment process. So again, you know, you're making sure you've got the right culture fit. And often it's, you know, I do work with employers who say, oh, well, we're not going to hire this person because they haven't got the right culture fit. But actually, often you can teach that. It's about the right attitude, actually, to learn that culture fit. Sometimes they don't sort of always understand it. Sometimes, you know, particularly working with new graduates and things like that, they just haven't learned how to be in the world of work yet. But they could possibly fit that culture. They just need sort of some training around it as well. So that's sort of something that I do as well. And then what's really important is when that new starter then starts, is that whole kind of induction and onboarding process. And that kind of filters throughout the organisation as well. It's not just a thing that HR does. It's something that, you know, a line manager needs to get involved with, and other parts of the organisation need to get involved with. And again, the most effective inductions that I see are where there's a real emphasis put on that person, not just understanding what their job is, because you've got to learn the sort of practical how to do your job bit, but actually you've got to understand how that fits into the organisation. So things like, you know, working with different teams and things like that, you know, going and having conversations with them, understanding their sort of how their bit of the organisation fits into that culture, and that you're continually reinforcing those values and that culture. You know, something I've just been doing with a group of line managers actually is designing a line manager charter that is based around the values of that organisation, and they have a really strong value base that they share. And then what I've done is worked on that and developed it more. So kind of, these are your values to all employees. So obviously, you know, you're an employee, you've got to follow these, but this is what it actually specifically means to you as a line manager. Okay, they've got this value. This is how you show up to the business then, showing this value. And just to kind of, again, really embed it into what people are doing. I think that's really important. So bringing it into kind of everyday conversations. It's not just a document that sits there and everyone forgets about it.
Thank you. That's really useful. Thank you very much. And I've one last question for you. As you know, I love reading and always constantly learning. So what would you say is the best book that you've read in the last 12 months?
So because running a business, you pretty much do that 24/7. In terms of reading, I've been doing a lot of I've been doing a further coaching qualification actually, so I've been reading a lot of books kind of around coaching, and something that I'm doing at the moment is working with an organisation to help train new careers advisors, so running a training academy for them. So I've been reading a book called CPD for the Career Development Professional, Handbook for Enhancing Practice. So I've been being a bit of a careers geek rather than kind of reading storybooks, and mainly in my free time at the moment, actually, rather than reading books, I'm actually in the process of writing a book myself. So my partner and I, a couple of years ago, we had a celebration. We decided we didn't want to get married, but we wanted to have a celebration instead. This was just before civil partnerships became legal for opposite sex couples. So we just sort of had a celebration. So I'm writing a book all about that and what we did, and kind of, it's a sort of a book about that meets kind of crafting as well, because I like making things and whatnot. So it's all about how you do a celebration like that. So it's called In Love, Not in Law, and hopefully it will be finished soon. So that's been my kind of main focus, is trying to read rather than write. Trying to write rather than read.
Fantastic. Well, you have to let me know when it's done. I'd love to have a look at that. But thank you so much for your time. I'm sure people that are listening are going to find so many useful bits of information in what we've discussed. And yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.